right, gang. Well, we are back. Welcome to the Stay Spicy podcast. So this season's all about leadership, and today we are focusing on our favorite topic of communication. Mm-hmm. As career communications professionals, obviously Lynette and I both think that it is the most important thing in leadership, and the cause and solution to all of life's problems, right?
Very much.
We stole that from The Simpsons.
Yeah. So beyond the importance of communication for leaders, there are endless schools of thought on this, and we're going to be one of those schools of thoughts today. But as always, we are going to take a different look at how leaders communicate, and we have an amazing guest to talk to us about that today.
We sure do. One of us. So Miguel Eichelberger is a poet, author, and communications professional. And he believes that communication is the most powerful technology we've ever created and that we should use it well. Thanks for being on the Stay Spicy podcast, Miguel.
It is my genuine pleasure.
Also, fun fact, Miguel and I went to high school together.
What?
We did. This is, we've only seen each other in person for the first time after like 20 years, just like a few weeks back. So.
Yeah. And we both look the same.
In the 1900s.
Yeah. In the 1900s. We're so old.
Which is a weird thing to think about.
Yeah. We won't be talking about our high school experience in this episode, though. That could be a whole other podcast. Miguel, we chatted about when we chatted about leadership communication. Actually, you were the one who inspired the title of this episode because we were trying to figure out what to call it, something spicier than just leadership communication. And you said, "Do it on purpose." And of course, I laughed because I have the sense of humor of a 15-year-old boy. But what does that actually mean when we talk about, in reference to leadership communication, do it on purpose?
So this is a topic near and dear to my heart. To many leaders, I'd say the vast majority of leaders, they tend to communicate by the key message, the like whatever the internal communications team has handed them to put out to the world, or whatever the entire C-suite has decided on is the best message. What they don't understand is that communication is a million things. It's body language, it's subtext, and it's so much that has to come from the heart of the organization, the values of the organization. If it doesn't, if you're just reacting and you say something, all of a sudden you can communicate. You can destroy a culture in a heartbeat, is what it is. And so, as a perfect example of that, we talked about this a little bit. There was an organization that I witnessed where all of the middle managers, right, all these extraordinary, driven, dangerous people in the very best of terms, were all complaining about the same thing. Same extent of burnout, the same turnover rate that at one point in time reached as high as 27%, and which, by the way, is also a form of communication. And they were going to their C-suite, they were telling the C-suite about it, and the response, after months and months of this, was, we're going to give everybody resiliency training. So let's just talk about what you've accidentally communicated. Right? So you've just told everybody that all of their complaints are weakness. They're not resilient enough, right? They're not strong enough. You've just told them that you also don't believe in their expertise to weigh a situation, figure out what the problem is, and then bring it to you. You also are telling them you don't care about their courage to step forward and tell you, like, yo, some shit's wrong over here, and we need to do something about it. What they're telling you is they feel powerless to change it because it's not up to them, right? It's literally up to leadership and how that comes through. So communication is everything, and you really have to think about what you're communicating. It really has to come from the values of the organization when the organization is at its best, right? It can't just be the thing you want to say right now to make the person in front of you happy. It can't just be the key messages that have zero heart because, 15 different people have weighed in and they've literally edited out as much human as they can.
Pencil fucked, I think they call it.
Pencil fucked, exactly right. Yeah, we call it slitting the throat with a red pen.
Holy. Okay.
Yeah. And when you do shit like that, you literally take away, like, it's almost like you're editing out the values of the organization that you proclaim to have.
And the values of the leader, right? Because I feel like sometimes we and I've had this conversation with my clients, you can't overscript a leader. Like sometimes you can't overscript matters of the heart. So I'm very happy to hear you say that.
Yeah. One of the other I just wanted to add to that, you can't overscript matters of the heart. One of the things that leaders also don't understand is when shit goes bad, right? When it's a hard day at the office, when, like there's going to be layoffs or whatever it is, what they don't understand is they're showing up immediately from a place of their own traumas, their own anxieties, right? They're not showing up from their best self. They're not going to be like, you know what, I'm going to show up with heart. I'm going to show up with connection today. Like, no, they're going to be like, oh shit. Like, and when they react that way, they are, again, not reacting on purpose. They're not communicating on purpose, right? They're communicating from this reactive space, which is literally could be an entire lifetime of trauma. So
basically, you're always communicating, whether you know it or not, whether you are thinking about it or not. So as a leader or aspiring leader, you should always be thinking about doing it on purpose, because
yes,
if you're not, you're still communicating. You're just unintentionally communicating.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with that. And so, this is a huge topic right now. I'm glad we're diving into this as professional communicators. And I think that, we could go on all day about this. But what we're going to do today is a little bit of a rapid fire segment to talk about some of the leadership communications truisms. So Lynette's going to read us some of these, and then we're all kind of going to weigh in on the topic from our different perspectives.
And of course, I came up with little sayings and titles because that's what I love to do. Okay, so I'm going to throw out a little prompt, a little kind of leadership communication truism. These all actually came from Miguel, and Miguel's going to define it for us. And then we're all going to dive in, giving some examples that we've seen, the good, the bad, the ugly, maybe the inspirational. We'll do our best. Some of us have seen more bad than good.
Indeed.
Okay, so the first one, and we kind of alluded to this, but the first truism is you are always communicating even when you're not. So, Miguel, what exactly does that mean?
This comes with another truism, which is every decision, every action, every moment in an organization is a piece of communication, whether you want it to be or not. And you can communicate in a heartbeat that even right now, even though this sucks, we're going to do the right thing, or you can communicate that you're going to do the bad thing. And one of the best examples of that in a good way that we talked about was I had this wonderful leader who went to a conference the conference was basically going to decide the fate of this organization that we were working at, that we loved. It was going to decide whether or not there would be the same funding kitty available for it and how that funding would be doled out and what it was going to look like, say, in 1 year's time. And when he showed up at the office, rather than the typical leadership thing where it's like, oh, it's all good, we went there, things are going to be rough, whatever, but we're going to figure it out. Instead, he stopped at every single desk in this really, really long hallway that was about, 100 feet long. He stopped at every single desk, every single office on the way down the hallway and told us, I want you to be in my office in the next 15 minutes. And it wasn't good. It was a difficult meeting, difficult conference. And what I want is to get everybody together in the room and brainstorm how we can find other sources of funding. So that's doing it on purpose, and that's making the decision to communicate to all of us, like, I trust your expertise, I trust your input. It's not just up to me. I'm not some person at the top of the hierarchy who's going to make every single decision. This is actually collaborative, actual teamwork. And of course, what did it do is it created a space where everybody felt safe to say the worst shit and to say the best shit, and everybody felt safe to toss out the weirdest ideas and the best ideas, and the end result was that organization was fully funded after that, right? We found other ways to do it. Mm-hmm. So
I guess I have some examples of the bad. I'm probably going to be that person in this podcast. I'll try to find some good ones. Yeah, I'll try to find some good ones. But I want to go back to what you said about even turnover is communication. And so there's, a workplace that I have experience with where there was a lot of turnover. And it's not just when there's a lot of turnover, but it's also who leaves and who you decide to let go, right? Like if there's a pattern, people notice patterns and they infer things from that. and they take things from that. So if you are not intentionally communicating about each move, then people are going to draw their own conclusions from that. So that whole, you're always communicating even when you're not. I think I would change it to especially when you're not, because your actions speak very loudly when you don't speak for them.
Yes.
And the other, I guess, example that comes to mind, kind of on a similar note, is I was thinking about it earlier today. Similarly, when there's constant reorgs and changes in an organization, and nobody either sees it coming, nobody's consulted, and it's just sort of, here it is, and there's just constant chaos and confusion. Or if you're told one thing and then something else happens, the signals you're sending to people are, you really don't matter. You're essentially just chess pieces on a board to get towards an outcome that's for me.
Yep.
It's
that this has nothing to do with you actions.
Yes.
Like, that's what it is. It's you're making decisions that literally have nothing to do with those people, even though, of course, the consequences inevitably end up falling on them, right, at the end of the day. That's 100% right. You're talking about, turnover. Like, we tend to measure cultures, big and small, on outputs, right? Like, we look at, how well are we doing in the numbers, right? Are we making good money? Are we hitting our metrics, all that kind of shit. What people don't understand, though, is that itself is another output, right? Like, how many sick days are people taking? That's an output. How many people are taking leaves of absence? How many people are actually quitting, right? When you see even somebody's performance go down, right? That's a piece of communication. That's an output, right? And it has very little to do with that person being bad at what they do. And almost always, it's the conditions that you're creating, right? Like, if it's the same thing too. Like, if you have a chaotic culture, the culture is an output, right? If you have a bad culture, I'm telling you right now, it means you have bad leadership. It means you don't have a culture problem, you have a leadership problem. And it's in the C-suite. It's never in the middle managers.
Right. And I think what I'm hearing from you both is that there's a lot of nonverbal communication. So quitting, even, your boss walking up and down the hall and just showing up. To me, that's an example of leaning in and showing presence. All that's nonverbal, but I think that that's really important. And, 55% of communication is nonverbal. So, eye contact, voice levels, sort of showing yourself as a leader, and being available, being visible in the space when something bad's happening. I think that that's also obviously an indicator of a leader, but also, as Lynette mentioned, an indicator of problems as well. When there is no availability, there's that withdrawal, there's that letting someone else handle it, there's that trickling it down to everybody else to deal with the problems, and just not being available.
Oh my God, Sherry, I want to tell you a quick story you're going to love.
Okay.
You're going to love this. So you both know, we've all done this before, right? Like, when there's going to be some big announcement or some big speech by XYZ C-suite leader, and you are the one who does the groundwork and helps them work out, their key messages and all the little ticks, boxes they're going to tick as they go through their speech. So we did all that, a lot of groundwork set up, and then this leader goes off book in a real bad way, like real bad way. And the response, of course, is, PR is going to be a nightmare, and media relations is going to be a nightmare. All that stuff is going to be a nightmare. And I had a conversation with said leader, and I told them, this is actually an opportunity to show leadership, to show up in the hallway, as you say, Sherry, to, go to my team, right, and go tell them, I understand how much work you put into this. I understand all the efforts that went into this. I understand there's late nights, all that. I'm sorry I screwed that up. I would love to get a little bit more media training to make sure that doesn't happen again. Instead, what ended up happening was an apology email written by somebody's executive assistant to the board.
What?
Not to the team. It was an apology to the board.
Of course.
Right? So this is again, and what do we just communicate there?
That's a cover your ass. That's a total cover your ass. That's not,
Totally. Don't give a shit about culture. Don't give a shit about people at all. Instead, I'm gonna go apologize. It also tells everybody that works in the organization that the power isn't at the C-suite. The power is at the board of directors, and the board of directors has no idea how the business runs. No idea. Like, they don't know anybody on the front line, right? So again, be careful what you communicate. Sorry.
Right.
Oh, I love that story. Also, I'm getting PTSD from when I was a communications professional, because there's nothing, it's a terrible feeling when you put so much work and you feel like I wrote the best speech, and then you see somebody go and fuck it up.
Yeah, and badly too.
Yeah, you're like,
badly.
no.
It's one thing to misspeak. Like, it's another thing to be like, I don't know, accidentally racist or whatever it is, right? Like, it is like it's when you
accidentally.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair.
But and then when I became a leader giving the speeches, I thought about that, when people would give me content, and I tried to be really mindful of honoring the work that they put in. And although I was kind of a nightmare because I ended up just writing my own speeches. You never write a speech for a speechwriter.
Never.
Sherry's like, no comment. All right, the next one. Give the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what does that mean with leadership communication?
If you are too afraid to give the bad news to your team, whatever that's going to be, you shouldn't be the one giving the good news either. It's as simple as that. You need to be the person who has the guts and the respect, and again, living into whatever values you say you have on the wall. I guarantee courage is some version of one of them, right? If you're not the person to step forward, to take responsibility, to say that this went south or this went south, and these are going to be the consequences within the organization, then you don't get to give the good news either, right? Like give it to your middle managers. It's not on you anymore.
I would say communicate with purpose. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's great. Go at it head on. Chances are your audience, your clients, your staff, they know what's going bad. They just want to know that you hear them and you hear it. But also, we talk about this a lot in branding. It's like the what, but the so what, right? What are you going to do with this information? What do you want them to do with this information? And what's like going to happen moving forward? So it's sort of that whole adage, we don't judge people by their mistakes. We judge them by how they fix them. What are you going to do to fix it? And I think that's how you handle that situation carefully.
Yes.
The so what part, I also was always a big proponent of communicating my rationale. And so I would say to people, like, I do want you to question things because I don't have all the information. I may, though, make a decision that isn't what you wanted me to do after considering the information that you gave me, but I'll explain why. I won't just say this is the decision. The why, I think, is so important to bridging the gap between sort of leader and team. And I also, as somebody, I wanted that from my leaders, and I didn't always get it, but I was somebody who I think would accept a decision I didn't agree with as long as I had a reason, like a rationale. Help me understand where you're coming from, and then I will take it and I will go and march and do my duty, right, as a member of the team.
I love that. But
if I don't know why, then there's going to be a mistrust there.
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
can't
going to
help
think
them.
that you made a bad decision.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm not going to feel, the other thing too is like I don't feel like a part of the team, so I'm not going to act like a part of the team. And so then I always started by feeling like I needed that from my leaders, and then I tried to do that as a leader. And I got feedback from the team that was appreciated, that I took the time to actually explain the reasons behind decisions.
Well, every leader teaches either by what they are or what they're not, and I think you're demonstrating that right now too, right? Like you can take really good advice from a really shitty moment and a really shitty person. You know what I mean? Like, just they didn't say it, but you can be like, I'm not going to do that. You know?
Not that.
Yeah, not that.
Okay, this one I think is going to be probably Sherry's favorite. She talks about this kind of thing a lot. You're a human first, a leader second. So how does that relate to leadership communication?
Oh boy. Okay. So this one gets me in the same space too. If I hear one more leader say that you like don't bring your personal
leader like a
problems
swear
to work,
word there.
it is a bit, yeah. Like it's
One more leader.
There were quotation marks around that leader.
Yeah.
If I hear one more say that, the workspace is not like, don't bring your personal life in here, like don't this isn't an emotional place, we're just going to be professional, as if professional means not human, right? Like it's literally like every organization, every stakeholder, every constituent, every employee are people. right? So like you don't have a choice. People are people, right? If they had a bad day at work or a bad day at home, they might bring that into the office. You have to communicate as a person first. It's just you, and more importantly too, you have to meet the people who come to you with curiosity and not judgment. Curiosity about them as people, not. I'm not talking about like, why do they suck today? It's like, are you okay? Like, what's going on, right? Like, you actually have to care about them. So yeah, that's my side of that.
Totally.
Either of you have examples of like how you've seen it done well, bringing humanity to the communications as a leader?
Oh boy, yes. Well, I have a very personal one. So in 2017, I'm not going to say unexpectedly, but quite quickly, my father passed away. And I this same director, by the way, the same boss who like came in and told everybody what had happened and then brought us to his office. I just emailed him and said I'm gonna be gone for I don't know how long. That was it. Like I didn't care what the bereavement time off clause was. Like none of that shit mattered to me. And I was like, I'm gonna be gone. And he said okay. And I was gone for 2 weeks and with zero communication back to the office. I was the manager like at the time. I was like zero communication back to the office. And when I did get back to the office, he walked in, reached across the table, shook my hand, said, I'm sorry, it's good to have you back. And then he just walked away. That's it. Right? It wasn't, I'm sorry, good to have you back. Can you get on this project, and this project? Instead, it was like, just good to have you back. Then he went to his office. Like, that's how easy it is. Right? And I got really good work done that day, too, because I realized there was no pressure. There was no pressure to have to pick up shit that was forgotten or anything like that. I just got to do me.
Yep. There are small things, seemingly small things, that make a big impact.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing Jane Halford. Your leader's a human, and it's like it's important to be human, and for leaders to be human, but also see the human needs of the folks on their team and to see the human needs in others. And I think that played a big role in your experience. I think you just had someone who really cared about their team and was an authentic leader. And I think for me, that's a big part of it. It's a big part of being a human first. And I am going to echo what Lynette said about, purposeful communication and rational and giving the rationale. I think people assume that their leaders are just towing the corporate line and they literally agree with every single decision that's made. And I really don't. I've been in that situation, and I always found that if you were authentic and honest about whether or not you agreed with a proposal or anything like that, sometimes that helped you relate with your team better, because just to assume that everybody just agrees with every decision just because they're delivering a mandate is not necessarily the case. Yep. And I've met so many leaders that have just, taken their role very graciously. I'm happy to be mentored by a lot of those folks. And I think that is a true leader, someone that can say, you know what, like, this is my role. I have a duty to communicate this. I don't necessarily agree with how it is. And I hear you. Like, I don't agree with it either. So I think that opening up those lines of communication in terms of, doing it differently and wanting to do it differently and communicating that you would have done it differently, I think that opens a lot of room for just that two-way communication and that trust building as well.
Some of my favorite leaders did that. It said like, okay, I know this is bullshit.
I hate it too.
But this is we got to do it. And but they also added, not just because we have to, because we're told, but here's what the rationale is coming from above, or here are some things you may not be aware of that factor in. Yeah.
And it's what you're both defining right now is another sort of big issue of our time, which is the hardest job in the world right now, in particular, is middle management. Is you have a constituency of people above you who believe it needs to be done this way, which is usually some kind of old way, the status quo, as we would say. And then you have yourself learning these new ways to lead like a person, actually communicate, do all that kind of stuff, stuck in the middle, knowing that there's a better way to do it, and kind of with nowhere to go, right? And it is the hardest job in the world right now, because you have to have those conversations. You have to have the shitty ones, because you obviously are going to be doing something you do not agree with, right? And then you have to have that with your team. It's always that responsibility is left to you, right? And then more importantly, you then have to filter up the Well, the frustration and the anger that comes from your team going up to, the C-suite, who are completely detached from the organization. So it's a really rough space to be in right now.
And this topic also kind of makes me think of something I think is a leadership myth, and because I got told a lot, like, you can't be friends with people who work for you. It's like, why?
Don't be human again.
Yeah. No, like, why? What's? And I'm not. Obviously you have to set some boundaries with work and personal, but I can't be curious about their lives. I can't share about lives. We can't hang out after work. I don't understand. I don't know who made that rule, but I think it's bullshit. And I also think what goes along with that rule that I was sort of like told explicitly and implicitly was like, don't talk about your own personal life or your own stuff at work, because you also shouldn't encourage that. So in addition to like being mindful of other people's life stuff, I mean, as a leader, you have life stuff too. Like, you're a human being. And so I had a new EA starting, and my life pretty much blew up like 2 weeks beforehand. And I had to like move, and I had a lot of upheaval in my personal life. And I forgot the day that she started. I mean, one of the reasons I needed an EA, because I in my calendar properly, but I had forgotten. And then I was supposed to meet her in the lobby and welcome her. I had all these great intentions, and I was late for it and running late. So I ran in all flustered and late, and I could have just been like, welcome, and pretended nothing happened. But I made a judgment call, and I sat down in her office, not in mine, and I said, so here's what's going on with me. I've got a lot going on. But I'm here for this, and I also said I've never had an EA before, so I'm going to need you to help me with how to work with an EA. And I, I've got a lot on my mind, but I'm present, and I just wanted you to know what's going on in the background. And we don't work together anymore, but we are now the closest of friends, and we hope to work together again someday. And I think it all started with a moment of honesty and vulnerability.
Yeah. The best companies that are remote first, they have dedicated meetings just for like, how you doing? Like, what are you up to right now? Like, what are you going through? What's your kid going through? That kind of stuff, right? And they do culture on purpose, and they do it perfectly because they actually make space for the human, even over a screen.
Yep.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about that during the pandemic, how, you got to meet people's kids, you saw people's cats, you saw their living rooms, you saw everything about a human being. Like, I think we just dived into a place where just everything was on the table about the person we were working with. And I hope that changed the game. Like, I hope that changed the culture, because I feel like it's okay to talk about certain things. Like, I had a boss who said, when I was working in politics, like, you did not tell anyone you were dropping your kids off at school. You didn't talk about that. If you had a meeting, you just made up another reason. Like, you just weren't really open about your personal life as a mom, or you weren't open about your personal life in any aspects. So I think that's been starting to kind of change a little bit, and I hope we have more of those experiences with Lynette and her EA. I just hope we have more of that honest conversation, because that's where it happens.
It's funny you bring up politics in that space, and the United States politics actually used to work a lot better when everybody lived in Washington, D.C., and all their kids went to the same schools, and even like no matter what side of the fence they were on, and they went to the same sports together and stuff, and a lot of the negotiation would happen just like over lunch or like in the bleachers at the sporting event or whatever it was, right? Like, it worked a lot better back then. A lot better.
That makes sense.
Well, and I think there's a lot of benefits from, like you said, going virtual. But a lot of leaders struggled with it, and they were just white-knuckling it until we got through it. Now they're trying to force everything back to the former paradigm, and there's this big friction in the workplace because of that, because it's like it goes against all the things we're talking about with, in terms of considering people's personal lives and and listening and what you're actively communicating. So that actually, I think, leads pretty nicely into the next one, which is it's not about the customer, stupid. That was my take on what you said.
Yeah. No, this is an important one to me too. So it goes to the idea when anybody says that they prioritize their customer, like this is about the end user, this is about the audience, this is about the customer. No, it isn't. It never is. What it is about actually always is your people. Period. Like if your culture is not okay, then they don't take care of the customer, the audience, the whatever, right? You have to look after your people first. It's not about the customer. It's about your people. And that it takes hard conversations, difficult conversations. Lynette, you brought up sitting in your EA's office, right? That is so important. It takes sitting on the same side of the desk as them, right? Like not one person over here and you over here, me in a like specific position of authority that you can see, but instead like we're both on the same side of the table and the problem's in front of us together, right? Like it takes so many subtle pieces of communication, body language, and doing it on purpose. But it's people first, man. Always people first. Like your culture is everything. What is it? Peter Drucker says culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I love that. And I think brand, like your brand is not just your customer. It's how your customer interacts with your culture, right? So
Yes.
Customers, they want quality. They want a feeling. They get quality from happy employees. Happy employees come from happy cultures. So,
and your customer isn't what differentiates you.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
If you think about companies that serve the same customer, what differentiates them is their culture and their values.
Yep.
Always. And it comes out in
values.
the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the classic one is talking about the difference between walking into a Costco versus walking into a Walmart, right? You walk into a Walmart, there's still stock on the floor in boxes, stuff's dirty, whatever it is, right? You walk into a Costco, everything is where it's supposed to be. And yeah, you're shoulder to shoulder with people, but it doesn't change the fact that it is a much neater, cleaner affair. The people who work there take care of it, right? It's just the indication of a better culture. Again, look at the output.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one.
Yes, I love that. And it goes back to what you said about outputs. A fixation on customers and sales and outputs is, again, poor communication.
Yeah.
And that's communicating to your people that they're dispensable, that they're not important. So why would they be loyal to you? Because if you're communicating to them is all I'm giving you is a paycheck, then all they're going to give you is the basic level of work or less.
This is a big one for me that we're talking about right now. This is one, I don't know if we talked about this before, but you talk about communication. Be very careful what you incentivize and reward. You can tell a lot about an organization by what behavior gets rewarded and incentivized, and what the end metrics are, right? Like if it's like, no, I don't care how that person made this many sales or got this many clicks. They just got that many sales and clicks, right? Like it's the problem with our modern media right now, right? Is they don't care that it's bullshit. They just care that it's fast and it's out and it's getting clicks, right? So
Right.
It's just be careful what you incentivize. And again, like if you Lynette and I think we all three of us talked about this, right? Is your culture is only as good as the worst behavior you allow, right? That behavior, whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter if 99% of the people there are good. If there is still a guy who is like breathing down women's necks or just being openly racist or misogynist at the table, and he's allowed to remain there
Because he's got good numbers.
Because he's got good numbers. That's the culture. You have no choice. That is your culture, right? And again, so yeah, if you walk into any organization and you're like, that guy's an asshole and he is the second in command, it's a culture of assholes, right? So.
Yes. Yeah. I've been eyeballs deep in assholes before.
You painted a picture just now.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, and just to add to that, when if you do something like that, right? If you say, okay, this guy is an asshole, but he's got good numbers. It's short-sighted as well beyond culture, because it actually is going to affect your numbers, because nobody else is going to perform well because they're miserable working with that person. So you're prioritizing one person's number over the rest of the team, and then you end up firing those other people because they're not performing. Bring in new people, they don't perform, And it's this cycle, all because you have communicated that is what we're about here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've kind of danced around this next topic because we've talked about what you can interpret from employee behavior. So this next one is, it goes both ways. So what does that mean in leadership communications?
Yeah. So we always think that communication comes top down. It doesn't. It's bottom up as well. And this is it's a dangerous space to be in, right? So if we go back to that resilience example that I gave, right? That's actually not hearing what's being communicated to you, right? Like this is you communicating to them and they're communicating back to you. Like you're communicating to them through tasks, new procedures, through new hires, through all of that stuff, right? Either you're buttressing the status quo or you're trying to change it. Those are all pieces of communication down, right? And much in the same way that you twist an ankle, that pain is the ankle communicating back to you, right? So if you've just injured a team, right, or you've just injured a group of people there because your policy, your idea, whatever you just communicated is short-sighted, didn't take into account all of the things that they have to stare in the face every single day, the communication is coming back to you, and it's usually coming back pretty loud, right? Like maybe the team starts to underperform. Maybe there's more complaints coming in from that team. Maybe the leader is under so much pressure that they can't even lead anymore. And there's just so many things that you need to look at. But if you prejudge it with it's weakness, right? If any thought in the back of your head where you're like, back in my day, we used to eat all of that shit. You know what I mean? If you're that kind of person, then you're not actually hearing anything. And the worst part about it is you start to make really bad decisions because you're making decisions based on filtered information, and it's filtering through you, right? So, yeah, that's a huge one. If you're not paying attention to the people beneath you, you're not understanding how communication works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was actually our last one. I wanted to, that makes me think of this whole communication goes both ways. So we've talked about how are you not just communicating out, but how are you listening to what's being communicated to you? We talked about how exit interviews are total bullshit.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're leaving? Tell me how I'm doing.
Yeah,
Seriously.
I don't care what you think until you leave. And even then, I really don't give a shit. This is just a policy we have to, procedure we have to follow. So, I mean, honestly, just eradicate exit interviews altogether, please.
Yeah.
But you should be seeking out that information as a leader continuously. You should know before someone leaves that they're going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be surprised by them leaving and then go, oh, we'd like you to tell us what you think on the way out the door.
We just broke up. How was it?
Seriously.
Oh, I don't want to know.
I want to interrogate you about all that stuff you didn't feel safe to tell me while we were together.
Yeah,
right? That's what it is.
Because you feel safe now. And then, and by the way, we could give you a reference. It's just
super.
Talk about oh God, it's just I mean, exit interviews. Maybe that's a leadership myth all in of itself. I don't know, but it's just whatever it is, it's bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a circle. So when we say back and forth, it's it's not just both ways, like a both way back and forth. It's a circle. So it's you receive information, you act on the information, you see the results of that information, and everything is cyclical in a healthy organization. So there's no roadblock, right? It's just a good road. And when it's not both ways, when you're not taking in that feedback, I mean, how do you have that sort of healthy cycle? And then, people leave.
That's a really good point, by the way, because we've all been there where we've had the reviews, right? The 3-month review or the 6-month review, where all of a sudden a bunch of really surprising information that you're well, I didn't know people felt that way, whether it's good or bad.
Brand new information.
Yeah, you're this is fucking new. And then you have the 3-month and the 6-month review or 9-month review, whatever it is, should never be a surprise. And if it is a surprise, whether it's good or bad, that means again you've got a breakdown in your culture. People aren't talking to each other.
Yes. Yeah, if you get to a 3-month probationary review and the employee is not doing well and it's a surprise to them, then you failed as a leader in your communications, for sure. The other thing, too, in terms of receiving communication, Cherry talked about body language, and we talked about it from the perspective of the leader, but also are you paying attention to people's body language around you, and being curious about what that's telling you? We were talking earlier about a thing. We had a saying, "Fix your face," and actually, I had somebody tell me that their leader made a decision to force everybody back into the office. It's a brand new leader to the organization, and the first order of business basically was like, everybody's going back into the office these days of the week, no matter what your role is, no matter what. And she said to me when this person said that, she's like, thank God my face wasn't at work that day. And I was like, but maybe it should have been, because
Yeah.
Although I think I don't know this leader, but I would hazard a guess that leader probably wouldn't have paid attention to the face. But, I remember a time when I was in a role, and I do not have a poker face. Anybody who has known me for 5 seconds.
Do not.
She does not.
It's very expressive.
If you're listening right now.
Literally everything.
She does not.
Yeah.
I had to get a colleague, to sit in board meetings across from me and like give me a signal when I had to fix my face. But I'm also like, maybe I shouldn't have fixed my face, because, well, it was fairly extreme, but I was expressing how I felt about things, right? And we should allow people to express how they feel about things. Some faces are more expressive than others. Mine's more on the extreme side of the spectrum, but still.
With 2 middle fingers next to it.
Spicy.
Yeah, I don't even need to wear the sweary t-shirts. It just says it all over my face. But I think, being mindful of how people are communicating, because they may not feel comfortable saying something with their words, but they'll say it with their body and their face, for sure.
Mm-hmm. This goes back to what you said too about the "my door's always open" bullshit. Yeah. Right. This is what I want. I want everybody to strike from the record that phrase. Like, none of this "my door's always open." We talked about like that. That means that everybody feels safe enough to actually walk through it. And if, by the way, if you have to say that, it probably means they don't feel safe. And then the other thing too is don't tell anybody to fix their face. In fact, pay attention to everybody's face, right? That's valuable information.
Yes.
There's just so many things that and again too, take that exit interview and shove it right up your ass. We don't need it here. It is such bullshit at the end of the day. Anyway.
Oh, that's the line of the day.
I think so. I think we've got our quote for Instagram. Yeah. Beautiful.
We got a new t-shirt. Oh, we got new merch.
Christmas right around the corner. Black Friday.
Take that exit interview and shove it up your ass.
All the way. All the way.
Knock it
right
off, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to sum this up for our listeners, Miguel. So what are your top tips and tools for effective communication for a leader?
There's 2, but one requires the other. So the first one is start listening to everything. Don't glance at the email. Read the full email. Read what's in between the lines there. Walk the hallways, as you say, Sherry. Right? Listen to the timbre. How much laughter are you actually hearing in your teams? If you're a remote team, all right, leave space, actual space in every meeting, right? I know you don't think it's productive, but I guarantee it's far more productive than you think, right? Is leave 10, 15, 20 minutes for the team just to talk about their lives, whatever it is, and shut up and listen, right? That's the most important thing, is shut the hell up. Go for walks with the lowest member in the organization. Who answers the doors? Go for a walk with them, right? They know more about what's going on the ground than you do, right? Go there, listen, and pay attention. And the second thing you need to do that is genuine curiosity, right? That's the
key.
Yeah.
Because I know somebody who does that, and they're not good. But it's about that authenticity.
You actually have to care, right? And again, too, the here's how I can incentivize that for everybody, all right? The raw information that you get from a person who actually feels safe, it doesn't matter what level of the organization they're at, is so much better than the information that's been filtered through the next level, and this person's a little bit scared to say the full extent of whatever this means, or they're a little bit scared to tell you what they actually saw, so they're just going to tell you some kind of like, you know, muted version of it, right? Like, no, get the raw information and have the courage to get the raw information, right? Because you might find out like, oh, I really fucked up in that meeting when I said this and this and this. I let my entire team down and I didn't even realize, right? So it's shut up, listen, ask questions you actually care to hear the answer to, and yeah, stay quiet.
Sherry, what's your top?
I think just short and sweet, embrace going against the grain. And we talked about the importance of being human, and make somewhere better if you leave it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You got me in the heart just now. That was good.
Got him in the feels. Mine's going to be oddly tactical, which is not usually like me, but I'm going to say that email should not be your primary form of communication. An email should only be used to reinforce something you've already said in another way.
Agreed.
So if you are primarily delivering information and communications through email, stop, because people will interpret it in their own way. And you're also identifying, you're creating a barrier. So you can send an email after you've had a meeting just to reiterate for everybody, here's what I said. Now, I know leaders who avoid sending emails and putting things in writing. That's not what I'm saying.
No, you have to say it a few times, for sure.
You have to follow up with an email. You have to put it in writing. But you should be delivering the communications in a human way through human means. So that would be my top tip. And then certainly also generationally, certain generations trend towards only communicating via text and email. And I would say if you are that generation, be mindful of it, and try to change that, and make in-person phone calls, meetings, virtual meetings, your primary form of communication. So on that note, that is a wrap on today's episode. This was a full one, as expected, but what a great one. And it felt strangely cathartic.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I don't know if it did for you, but it certainly did for me.
No, it did. Thank you for letting me rant. That's always appreciated. That's
really what we're about here on the Stay Spicy podcast. So thank you, Miguel, for joining us and for your insights. So if people want to find you to either hire you or send you hate mail, where can they find you online?
Hate mail is most welcome. You can find me at migueleichelberger.com and at Eichelbard on most of the social platforms.
Yes. So, yeah. And if you're on Medium, I highly encourage you to check out his writings on Medium or on his website. He's a very talented writer and has some published works coming up soon.
Thank you for that. Wasn't fishing for it, but thank you.
I was like, am I allowed to say it?
Get yours. Get your bag.
Yeah, stay tuned. And then for us, you can find us online at Stay Spicy Inc. on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, of course, stay spicy.